McCloskey, in our remaining minutes here as we await John Paul II's arrival at Lambert International Airport and what I imagine will be a fairly swift departure, we should remind our viewers who perhaps haven't been with us since Mexico of the apostolic exhortation of the post-synodal document. What that means is the summation of the Synod for America.
The Church in America.
The Church in America is what it's called. Boy, you should be doing this. The Holy Father commissions lay people, and this is really the core of the document. He says, the lay faithful, precisely as members of the Church, have the vocation and mission of proclaiming the gospel. They are prepared for this work by the sacraments of Christian initiation and by the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Perhaps we've lost sight. Often we imagine the pastor, a priest, has this responsibility of evangelizing, and the Holy Father is saying, no, you lay people have a responsibility as well. Can you speak to that at all?
Certainly, it's a responsibility and it's also a privilege, which is important for us to see. It's a joy. It's not a heavy responsibility. It's a joy. It's a light one. It's something that any of us who have fallen in love with Christ and have the benefit of all the sacraments, Scripture, the teaching of the Church, are well equipped in order to be able to spread the word among us. At the same time, it's important to say the Holy Father, we could say he's commissioned us, but really all he's doing is reminding us of what is the heart of the Second Vatican Council, the vocation to holiness of the layperson.
That calls to holiness for all of us.
That's right. It's not about liturgical changes or ecumenical dialogue, which are some of the ideas that primarily was about, although it has those aspects. It is about, which is proclaimed in Lumen Gentium and also in the Pastoral Constitution, which we're hearing about from Monsignor Eras, regarding the pastoral, the role of the Church in the modern world, is lay holiness. And then it's a question, with that lay holiness, how do we affect this evangelization? How does Christ impact on culture? That is your job and it is mine. But it's no more mine than it is yours.
It's really something we share in concert.
We share in common and we work together, each one with a particular vocation inside of the Church. Mine is to serve your capacity to be a saint and to be an apostle. That is why I, as a priest, am here for you.
The Holy Father says, I urgently desire to encourage all the members of God's people, particularly those living in America, where I first appealed for a commitment new in its ardor, methods and expressions, to take up this project and to cooperate in carrying it out. In accepting this mission, everyone should keep in mind that the vital core of the new evangelization must be a clear and unequivocal proclamation of the gospel.
Ardor, methods, and expression, new ones. That is why we all should be excited, because we have embarked on a new adventure in the new century, in a new millennium, and we are privileged to be at this moment in order to bring it to effect.
And we are watching John Paul II's limousine make its approach, its final approach, to the airport here. Lambert Field, of course, the site of the great Charles Lindbergh, coming back from his transatlantic flight, flying the spirit of St. Louis. And here comes the man who has revived the spirit of St. Louis, about to depart and leave America. It is a sad moment for some, seeing the Holy Father go. But at the same time, he naturally has all of his duties to attend to in Rome, to plan for this Jubilee year that lies ahead. And I think it's safe to say this will be the Holy Father's last visit, at least this millennium.
I think it's very safe to say. We hope we're wrong.
Yes, we'd love to see him come back, but with Poland, with his sights set on Poland in June.
In Jerusalem in the year 2000,
right,
perhaps?
I don't know if he'll be able to squeeze us in between, but perhaps afterward. Of course, he's got a hockey date now at the Kiel Center.
And he still has not visited Birmingham, Alabama yet either.
That's right, and we've got some ribs all ready for him. There's the papal limousine driving onto the tarmac. We don't know what quite to make of this departure ceremony here. We've been led to believe that it may be quite brief. It does appear that there will be a brief exchange of gifts, some form of artwork presented to the Holy Father, and then a very brief candlelight ceremony. Everyone's being provided with candle flashlights to help illuminate the ceremony. imagine Vice President Gore will briefly greet His Holiness. Then there will be a meeting between Vice President Gore and His Holiness. Mrs. Gore will meet with the cardinals. And about 20 minutes later, the Pope, escorted by Vice President Gore, will hear the Vatican anthem, the national anthem, and then a very brief goodbye, and he will depart on Shepherd 1, closing this historic visit to America. There is the papal limousine driving up. See all those policemen lined up. Heavy security here with both the Vice President and the Holy Father at Lambert International Airport in St. Louis.
This will be the most important and renowned flight from St. Louis since Lindbergh himself took off in 1927 to cross the Atlantic.
Another thing the Holy Father calls for in this apostolic exhortation, the Church in America, he says how important it is that we evangelize the culture, and he uses the Virgin of Guadalupe as the model, the symbol of the enculturation of the gospel. And I know that's very much a part of your work, reaching out and attempting to evangelize various cultures in the world today, whether it be the media, politics, economics. You yourself were a Wall Street broker.
That's correct.
And perhaps you can talk a little bit about how you journeyed from Wall Street to becoming a priest of Opus Dei.
Well, it was a rather unusual route, and not what people might think, because it basically was the result of a vocation I already had received as a young man as a lay member of Opus Dei.
Holy Father meeting Vice President Al Gore and Tipper Gore there behind him. They're making their way into this bilateral meeting. Let's see if we can hear any audio from this meeting with the Vice President.
Well, there was such an outpouring of joy that you visited. We followed it very closely because they're our closest neighbors in town. And here in St. Louis, of course, the response has been wonderful.
I was here as Cardinal tonight.
Have you seen changes on this trip? Do you notice changes in St. Louis on this trip from the time you visited in '69?
My visit was very brief, very short. I cannot really
Pardon.
It was the time of Cardinal Cario.
Well, it's a great city, and they have, the people of St. Louis have welcomed you with open arms, as you have seen and felt.
Nice meeting yesterday and you, this morning, for the celebration, the doctor and cathedral. Very nice.
Yes.
Here you have members of the cabinet, it appears. I think that's Donna Shalala with her back to us there. And here comes Bishop Joseph Fiorenza of Galveston, Houston, president of the Bishops' Conference. Tipper Gore.
His Holiness Pope John Paul II.
And here comes the Holy Father.
The Vice President of the United States and Archbishop Justin Regali.
John Paul II, hand in hand with Vice President Al Gore. Archbishop Regali on the other side of the Holy Father. Secret Service now blocking a shot of the Holy Father. And now they're bringing the Pope to a little area that's been reserved for him here in velvet rope. We're putting him behind now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the anthems of the Holy See and the United States.
A lot of young people in this gathering. We'll let you listen to the Vatican anthem for the last time during this visit. John Paul II, about to depart St. Louis, Bishop Stanislaw Zivich, the Pope's practical secretary, is his official title, though personal secretary is how we'd probably refer to him here in the United States, directing the Holy Father toward, I imagine, a chair or some individuals who will greet him with gifts.
Dave and Bridget, they represent 600 Catholic school students that are here this evening. They want to offer you a gift.
2 Catholic school children here giving the Holy Father a gift before he departs.
A spiritual bouquet.
Some form of artwork presented as a thank you to the Pope. Vice President Al Gore sticking nearby.
Okay, where'd you go? Farewell committee. We should meet the farewell committee.
And now the Holy Father is meeting the farewell committee. We don't have a list of who makes up this farewell committee, but I imagine it was individuals involved with organizing this papal visit. And
Watch my girl.
I imagine many of the same people who made up the welcoming committee.
I imagine. It looks like there are various representatives here of the Archdiocesan service organizations, including Catholic Charities, Birthright, the Office of Laity and Family Life, the Human Rights Office, the Pro-Life Office, and 600 young people from the Archdiocese, recently confirmed people. We're getting some, sounds like someone singing in the background. But the Holy Father is greeting now members of the farewell committee. People beginning to sing to the Holy Father as he makes his way out of this hangar. Bishop Stanislaw Dziewicz handing out rosaries to the children. Tipper Gore meeting the Holy Father, talking briefly with him. We can't quite hear all the comments. Cardinal Sodano here, the Secretary of State, meeting with Vice President Al Gore.
Yes. Thank you.
I believe that's the new nuncio,
We're praying for the victims.
papal nuncio of the United States.
Gabriel Montalvo.
Vice President Al Gore
Remember Governor Carnegie
telling the Pope he's praying for the victims of the Colombian earthquake.
and Mrs. Carnahan.
Thank you. Wonderful to have you.
More members
This
of
is a
the
member of our cabinet, Secretary Donna Shalala.
cabinet here. Donna Shalala, a Catholic, bending over and kissing the Holy Father's
Lebanon.
ring. She is the head of the Health and Human Services.
That's correct.
General Barry McCaffrey.
Barry McCaffrey, drug czar for the Clinton administration.
Senator John Ashcroft.
Welcome to Missouri. Thank you for the steadfast.
John Ashcroft, Republican senator, recently announced, I believe he would not seek the presidency.
Congressman Dick Gephardt is the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives.
Holiness, we're so happy to have you here. It's such an honor.
I wish you well. And Jane Gephardt.
Mr. and Mrs. Gephardt, the minority leader, and his wife. I didn't get the name there. We can't see faces, so we're relying on... The Holy Father making his way past a flood of cameras and young people. You hear them serenading him in the background there. We'll let you listen into the final moments of the Holy Father here in St. Louis.
I should see you. Our ambassador, Lindy Boggs.
Thank you.
When I was a baby, Clarence Harmon of St. Louis.
Holy Father! Thank you. Thank you. Daniel? I love you, Daniel. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you, John.
This is Clara McCaskill, Your Holiness, the State Auditor.
Thank you, John Paul. Thank you, John Paul.
Bob Holden, Your Holiness, the State Treasurer. Jay Nixon, the State Attorney General.
Holy Father! Bless me, Holy Father! Holy Father! Bless me, Holy Father! Holy Father! Bless me, Holy Father! Touch me, Holy Father! Please, sir, touch me, Holy Father! Holy Father! Holy Father! Touch me, Holy Father! Thank you!
It's an honor to be here.
John Paul II, they're meeting with Bishop Braxton, an auxiliary in St. Louis. We are, of course, seeing all of this from the vantage point of those meeting the Holy Father, so unfortunately we're deprived of faces. So though we are seeing the Pope, we don't always know who he's greeting. The religious are now greeting him. The cardinals and various priests. Father Dennis Schnur, Monsignor Schnur, the secretary of the NCCB.
Yeah, all right.
And the Holy Father now turning to a young child in the audience. These are some of the children, Catholic school children who've come out recently confirmed to see the Pope and bid him farewell. Of course, he loves touching the little ones.
It's wonderful to see how fluidly he goes back and forth between important people, so to speak, so-called, to the people whom he really treasures and the people who are the future.
And you notice he spends more time individually with the children than he does with some of the leaders.
Let the little children come unto me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Various bishops, archbishops, cardinals, and priests who have helped out in this visit or are leaders in the church.
Thanks a lot for coming. It's a great honor, of course.
We'll let you hear some of the comments people are making to the Holy Father as he departs.
Father Rice is the director of our seminary college. And the blessing of our seminary. The seminarians pray for you.
Excuse me, sir.
No problem.
Father now making his way out to the awaiting TWA jet Shepherd 1, which will carry him back to Rome. Of course, in the background there at the departure ceremony, that was EWTN's Dana, you heard singing, the Irish singer, familiar to many of our listeners and viewers. Holy Father will take a 9-hour flight from St. Louis to Rome. Of course, this TWA is a familiar airline to the Holy Father. He has taken it back to Rome in his several visits. Approximately 2,000 hours of labor were involved, which is really something extraordinary, reconfiguring this plane. And the idea being to make it as comfortable as possible for the Holy Father, to give him a private cabin where he could rest. As you can imagine, with a 9-hour flight, he would probably want to take a little nap for part of the return flight.
And we certainly hope that he gets a chance to rest somewhat, perhaps out at Castel Gandolfo, which he often does after these grueling trips.
Castel Gandolfo being the summer residence of the Pope. The retreat takes him away from the immediate business at the Vatican and the crushing schedule that he is under. I mean, I don't think people realize how early he is up in the morning beginning prayer, and he has a private mass. He often meets then with dignitaries. He spends lunch talking business, usually with some of his curial cardinals. Then he has public audiences, public events, all of this intermingled with his own private prayer time, which is done periodically throughout the day, 7 hours a day. And I'm told he spends the evenings largely writing, working on these encyclicals.
There's many stories of the Holy Father traveling in one country and on an airplane, and when someone asks him what he's scribbling or writing, and he says, I'm preparing for the trip to Ecuador, which takes place 3 years from now.
So he's always thinking very far out.
Very far ahead.
And I suppose he gains great inspiration from these trips and great ideas to...
He's a man of consummate vision and imagination. And that's one of the qualities that makes him unique, along with his holiness.
Indeed. You see the children there, they're all equipped with little flashlights to wave to the Pope as he goes off, and they can see him gesturing with those from the ground. Again, a very restricted crowd here allowed on the tarmac. For security reasons, you don't see the big, large crowds we associate with some of the other papal departures.
In Mexico, as we saw, some of the young people tried to climb up on the wings of the airplane.
Yes.
Or to hitch a ride with the Holy Father to St. Louis.
Yeah, and at moments I remember when one particular moment when the young boy ran up and threw himself down in front of the Holy Father, which would cause the Secret Service to go into fits. But in Mexico, it was deemed okay, and thank God it was, everyone
Totally
came away
innocent.
unscathed, and it was totally innocent. You see the various TWA staffers there at the foot of the plane waiting for the Holy Father. There will be 12 flight attendants here to serve the Pope in this plane. Now, normally it accommodates 191 people, this TWA 767-300. But with the altered seating, there'll be 40 members of the papal party, 65 journalists, and of course, John Paul II, the shepherd himself.
On his flight to Mexico, as he always did, he spent some time with the journalists. It'll be quite interesting for our viewers and readers in the days ahead to see what he has to say to the journalists who accompany him on the way back.
Right.
His own impressions of his trip to Mexico and to the United States, and this wonderful apostolic exhortation, the Church in America, that he's left behind for our implementation.
And of course, tomorrow we'll be reporting on all of that as soon as we get the details of what he shares with these journalists. We see Archbishop Regali and the Holy Father there in the center of your screen. Holy Father in the red cape, you can't miss him, making his way out to the waiting plane. Vice President Al Gore and Archbishop Regali on either side of the Pope. Secret Service on all sides, wanting nothing to go wrong. And of course, Tipper Gore is talking to the Holy Father as they walk down the tarmac here. She's now directly next to the Pope. You hear the crowds chanting. These are among the final sounds the Pope will hear and sights he will see before returning to Rome. And we inch closer to this great Jubilee, the year 2000, the third millennium, the springtime for the Church, according to John Paul II.
The Holy Father counts on each one of us to make sure that indeed it is the springtime and not a winter. We have every confidence that his prayer for us, his vision and imagination, and the instructions, if you will be implemented by us with a great amount of generosity.
And of course we see in all these documents, in all these events, in everything the Holy Father has said and every action he has committed during this visit to America, we see the handwriting of the third millennium and the reflection of the third millennium. Father, you were sharing with me a little earlier the plan for this year of the Father and the various values and thoughts the Holy Father encourages in this year.
Yes.
Could you remind us of those and remind us of how everything we've heard here really fits in beautifully with those ideals?
This is the year of God the Father, who in the theme of his unconditional love for every human creature, the focus we should give that personally is our own conversion from sin. Now to express in works of charity, which is the greatest of all the theological virtues.
And we heard that time and time again. Go back to the sacrament of penance. He told the young people, purify yourself so you can receive the light and get the Lord's help in putting you on the path to the proper vocation for your life.
And I think in particular an interesting challenge, which is not an easy one for us, is in terms of the theme of unity, is with non-Christians. How can we be more Christ for them so they see Christ and recognize him as not simply a human person but divine? And finally, our Blessed Mother is daughter of God the Father.
And now we see John Paul II climbing the stairs to the third millennium and to this TWA jet which will take him home to Rome.
I'm not sure many of us would be up for climbing a flight of stairs on a day like he has just had.
Not after a 6-day grueling trip, shaking thousands of hands, blessing millions of people.
As he turns to wave goodbye and to give his blessing to us, who are watching, listening, who all participated in this trip.
TWA crew trying to spy a glimpse of the Holy Father before he comes aboard this jet, Shepherd One, and His Holiness turns past the papal seal, gracing the side of this TWA jet, Shepherd One, and His Holiness enters, greeting the crew, the captain, bending to kiss the ring of John Paul II, and he graciously spends time with each of them, all genuflecting and kissing his ring, I might add. They're either devoted Catholics or very generous Protestants.
Or people realize that they're before a leader of a state and indeed a great monarch, or at least the representative of the greatest monarch, Christ the King.
And the papal security force now making their way up the staircase and on to the waiting jet. 40 people, 65 journalists. And momentarily that runway will be pulled away, a door will be closed, and John Paul II will make his way. We see in the window there members of the flight crew still genuflecting to John Paul II. Father traditionally sits in one of those windows so the crowd can see him, and he normally blesses them as he departs, sometimes praying the rosary. I remember in Baltimore when he left, either Baltimore or Newark, I can't remember which, but I think it might be Baltimore. I remember seeing him in the window there, clutching his rosary, and occasionally he'll pray his breviary or the rosary as he departs. This is EWTN's live continuing coverage of John Paul II in America, which has bittersweetly come to a close. We are awaiting the departure of the papal plane, Shepherd 1, and in just moments we will have been on the air consistently and continuously for about 12 hours. Actually, I think we've already passed the 12-hour mark. We were on at 7:45 this morning, Central Time, and here we are. And it has been an exhilarating day.
An enjoyable way to spend those hours together with the Pope, and also with our viewers and our listeners.
Sure.
Here in the United States and overseas.
In a moment we will get some reaction from Lambert International Airport. In fact, why don't we go now to Lambert International Airport, and Donna, the singer so known by our EWTN viewers. Donna just performed at the farewell ceremony. Donna, what did you see there? What was the feeling amongst the people?
Incredible excitement. There was a lot of young people there at the welcoming. There was not so many young people, but this evening there were pledges by the different groups within the diocese, pro-life, human rights, educators, confirmation representatives. So there were a lot of young people, and as each of them pledged, we sang the words that the Holy Father had uttered and were taken up as a theme here to ensure that the power of salvation may be shared by all. Mm-hmm. And as they stood, they had lighted candles, which they waved back and forth. So there was great excitement before he arrived there. As he did arrive, they just erupted. They were jumping up in their seats and just couldn't hold themselves back. They were rushing forward, all age groups there. He didn't speak going through the hall. He gently moved along, was presented with different gifts and greeted different people. And I have to tell you, I'm so excited. He shook my son Robert by the hand, and he was given some rosary beads from the Holy Father.
Did you have occasion to speak or meet briefly with the Holy Father, Donna?
Not to speak with him, no. I was there when he arrived I sang at the welcoming event.
We saw a little bit of that, and so did our viewers.
Yes, and I sang as he left. We sang, everyone sang unaccompanied. We sang Be Not Afraid, Immaculate Mary, and Totus Tuus, and Here I Am, Lord, as he moved along greeting the people. And there was a great feeling of really of community, of unity, and people were really genuinely singing from their hearts to this man that we love so much.
Actually, Donna, we saw your son Robert greeted by the Holy Father there. Our cameras picked him up.
He was awestruck. He just was glowing when I met him afterwards. He was so excited.
Now tell me, what are your lasting impressions of this particular visit? I know you've been at the side of the Holy Father in Denver at the World Youth Day, and in had other occasions to be with him. What are the lasting impressions you have of this visit to St. Louis and to America?
My lasting impressions will be that this man is pouring himself out for us, that we will never understand what this man is suffering at this time. He is just spending himself for the sake of his people. And yet there is that twinkle that comes into his eyes, particularly when he sees young people. And as he did at the dome where the young people were, the Kiel or Kyle Dome, whatever its name was, when just as he was leaving the stage, flipped his walking stick over and pretended he was hitting a hockey ball with it. Mm-hmm. Just this twinkle, this life that's within him. the genuine love that young people feel towards him. There is no age gap with this man. And I truly feel it's because they know that when he speaks to them, he speaks absolute truth. But he loves them so much. And his words were, I expect great things of the young people, not just of St. Louis, but of America. He doesn't actually say, don't do this and don't do that. He actually says what we have to do. He's very positive in his message. And, of course, as he speaks, we're all aware of what we shouldn't do.
Very good. I thank you so much, Donna, for spending time with us, and please have a safe trip home.
I will.
And we will naturally see you, and our viewers can see you on your weekly show here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Good night. Donna, they're giving her impressions. Father, as John Paul II situates himself here in the TWA jet, the Shepherd 1, preparing for this long trip back to Rome, what of all he has said here sticks most in your mind? Is there any practical thing you heard or a key idea that resonates with you?
I think the Holy Father has prepared us right up to the threshold. We're just about to cross the threshold of that, as the title of his best-selling book, of the third millennium of the Jubilee year. At the very end of his address, the last thing that he really had to say to us in a teaching sort of way, I was struck by him talking to America. He said, America first proclaimed its independence on the basis of self-evident moral truths. America will remain a beacon of freedom for the world as long as it stands by those moral truths which are the very heart of its historical experience. And so, America, if you want peace, work for justice. If you want justice, defend life. If you want life, embrace the truth revealed by God. And I believe he is leaving it up to us to, using our prayer life and our ideas, our energy, our own vision and imagination, to see how we can implement, how we can be part of building a civilization of love and truth. I'm struck also, as we begin to come to an end of our time together, it came to my mind an aspiration by a great holy man of this century who said that we should have often on our lips and in our heart the phrase, all to Jesus through Mary with Peter. Three of our great loves, Jesus himself, our Blessed Mother, the shortcut to him, together with the Holy Father.
We're hearing the crowds now. Cheer on Peter. This Peter that remains so close to the Blessed Mother and has invoked her throughout this visit. And really, I suppose if there is a silent partner in all of this, it would have to be Our Lady of Guadalupe, who has been part of every event here for this Pope. He has invoked her name, her image, her memory.
The Holy Father, when he was ill, to put it mildly, after his assassination attempt, lying in bed in his hospital, people who have come to visit him, he was in excruciating pain and almost died twice during this time of recuperation. They'd often find him with a cassette player, and the cassette that he would be listening to over and over again were traditional Mexican folk songs of praise to Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Really?
Can we say she's the equal of Our Lady of Czestochowa, or it is the same lady? But there's a mystical bond somehow between the Polish Pope and the people of Mexico. I think is revealed or shown in a certain sense by that anecdote that I just told.
What do you think it is about those Mexican people, about this continent of America, that keeps drawing the Pope back and allows him to put such hope and invest such time and energy on this particular continent?
He sees it as a continent of hope. He sees a continent of youth. And he sees us perhaps less damaged in many ways by the ideologies which have in so many ways, will not say destroyed, but brought to a very sorry state, Eastern and Western Europe.
Sure.
The ideologies of communism on one hand and of the Enlightenment on the other. He says we have a chance now to throw off whatever influence came from those particular ideologies in our own continent and forge a new way, a way that's truly Christian.
What about the fidelity and the closeness to the Mexican people? To what do you attribute that? As you just said, the Holy Father playing traditional Mexican hymns to Our Lady. Is it that love of Mary?
It's a love of Mary, and it's a love of seeing, as we've talked about, the encounter of those two beautiful cultures, that of the West and the indigenous people of America, a model for all of us.
Of course, this idea proclaimed by the Holy Father during this very last address that we heard at the Cathedral Basilica there. He said, America first proclaimed its independence on the basis of self-evident moral truths. America will remain a beacon of freedom as long as it stands by those moral truths, as you were just telling us. And that, I suppose, being the last message he hopes will ring in the ears of Americans throughout the continent.
And let it ring in our ears, but let's read it and highlight it and pray about it and create discussion groups and to see what it means for us and how we can put it into action.
And of course, the very last statement we heard from the Pope was at the cathedral at the conclusion of that ecumenical prayer gathering. And to reiterate, he naturally thanked all of the local officials in the city of St. Louis, thanked the young people who joined him, his cardinals and brother bishops, and then at the very end, he blessed St. Louis and America and says he will not forget this moment. And he says, nor do I forget the hidden but effective support of all who prayed for the spiritual outcome of this event. And I suppose that is another theme he continued to bring to us, this idea of prayer and the importance of personal prayer, sanctification, personal holiness. We're now awaiting the departure of the trans-world jet, Shepherd 1, carrying John Paul II, the Vicar of Christ, in the shoes of the fisherman Peter. And this is EWTN's live coverage of John Paul II in America, and he is still there, not having departed Lambert International Airport just yet. I want to return just in our remaining moments to that document, the Church in America, so central to this visit, indeed the justification for the visit. He mentioned some points that bear repeating. First of all, the vocation to proclaim the gospel, that is everyone's. The importance of catechists, and in Mexico and South America, this is so important, because there is such a shortage of priests that often the catechist is the one who brings the faith. And in our own country, he encouraged the parents to be the catechist.
It's interesting to note, to give an idea, is that in the United States we have one priest for every 1,000 Catholics. In Mexico it's one priest for every 13,000. And we think we have a priest shortage. But as you mentioned, the answer is for each one of us to become a catechist and not to rely on the clergy to bear the heavy burden.
The camera now zeroing in on John Paul II in the window of one of the windows here of the Shepherd 1. Of course, there's so much white in those windows, I don't know which one is the Pope. I imagine he's to the right there, but I haven't seen him appear in any of those windows, I don't think. We're getting a front view of Shepherd 1. And it doesn't look like the captain or his second man has taken their place. Oh yes, there are two people there in the cockpit. The light is coming on. So I imagine at any moment, this plane bearing the papal flag and the American flag will depart. And of course, the Holy Father stressing in all of his talks here the defense of life, innocent life, old life, life at all of its points. And of course, Youth, the great emphasis placed on youth. You mentioned early on the preferential option for youth. He called for us to end prejudice, to welcome the immigrant. Of course, return to the sacraments, putting the Eucharist at the very center of our faith. And then he also spoke about debt, the crushing debt on the burden of the debt on these third world countries, emerging economies, drugs, the drug trafficking so prevalent in this hemisphere, the need to evangelize the media, Catholic education, urging that Catholic education remain Catholic, preserve its identity, and of course this idea of enculturation, which this Pope has so beautifully shown us through the years.
We certainly have a long laundry list. Should last us not only till the Jubilee year, but well into the next century in order to put all that into effect. But to see that all these themes are interlocking, that if indeed we do have the dignity of the human person at the center and a love of Christ, then these things will fall into place one after another after another. I was particularly struck in thinking about this emphasis on youth for you and I, and for also all of our viewers and listeners, that no matter how old we are, we're all capable of still working in one way or another with youth, and not to let ourselves in any way get old. And one of the ways that we do that is precisely by working with youth, whether it be in the parochial level or in the school, or perhaps even corporal works of mercy to them, or with those children or grandchildren, nieces or nephews. They look up to us, particularly in the way we take so serious our Catholic faith. And perhaps each one of us will be able to stay as young as the Holy Father is at the age of 78.
We can only hope.
We can only hope.
You know, I was struck during the last time I saw him. I was amazed by how strong that voice was. And I think in person, when you hear it, when you hear that voice reflecting and bouncing off the marble of those rooms in the Vatican, one can't help but be impressed by the vitality of this man, despite the physical problems he is now encountering and dealing with. And as we said early in our coverage, some mistake his lack of expression for coldness, and that's just not the case. This is probably one of the warmest
human beings that ever lived.
Could ever encounter.
I was thinking in watching him as saying goodbye, and also in his greetings, could there be any person in history who knows more people personally than he, or remembers names or anecdotes? It's unimaginable to us that the capacity that he has exercised, the capacity, human capacity, better than almost any person imaginable.
Surely.
Because he really gives himself to every person. When we realize that he has close to 1 billion sons and daughters, it's quite a task, but he's almost up for it.
Indeed. And we also have to recognize this man was a dramatist, a wonderful priest, of course, in Poland. He's a world-class philosopher. He saw the fall of communism. And he continues exercising all of those talents, really, in this ministry. A brilliant example of the way God prepares us, I suppose, for life and for the task he intends for every life.
Right. And we can imagine the Holy Father as he looks back upon his life, and probably at the moment that he was elected as Pope, probably understood in a flash how he had been prepared for that moment, perhaps never dreaming or thinking that it could happen. But the Holy Spirit knew exactly what he was doing from the Caro Votiva's conception until that moment when he was elected Pope. He was perhaps the best prepared Pope in history.
Very good. And we are awaiting the departure of Shepherd I, John Paul II's plane that will take him back to Rome at the conclusion of this trip to America. 6-day pilgrimage that started out in Mexico City and concludes here on the tarmac of Lambert Field in St. Louis, Missouri. It's been a grueling trip and an inspirational one. You hear the shouts there of the people still on the tarmac. Even though the Holy Father is sealed within this plane, they continue to yell and shout for him.